Okay. So we're on page 19, and so we need to talk about we need to talk about when you find common denominators, when you don't need to find common denominators, how you borrow with fractions, and so on. So lots of things going on here, okay? So here we go. First problem, number 8. You do need to find common denominators. So so what is a number that 9, 3, and 6 can all go into? 18. So I like to just rewrite that 18 on all of these here so I can make equal fractions. Okay? So what do I have to multiply this 9 by to get 18? 2, so the new top is 14. 3 times what gives me 18 times 6, so the new top is 12. 6 times what gives me 18? So the new top is 15. Now, let's add all of those up. There is a denominator of 18. So 14 plus 12 is 26, 36, 41. Is that right? Did I add that right? 41. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and add up our other whole numbers. Okay? So our whole numbers altogether is 5, 6, 3. So is our whole number 76? All right. So what's the issue? What's the problem that we see here? Okay, good. So the problem is that we've got 41 on top of 18. So that's our major issue. Right. So what you do is you just kind of come over here to the side and you essentially think of this 41 over 18 as its own little entity. And you think, oh, okay, 41, I'm thinking 18 goes into 41 how many times? Twice. Okay? So, because essentially what we're doing is this. 18 goes into 41 2 whole times. That is 36. I subtract. And then I got to borrow. That's a 5. So my remainder is 5 on top of 18. So 2 and 5 over 18s. So then I take this and I combine it with what the whole numbers are on the front. So that means this is now going to be 78 because I add the 2 and 5/18 to it and 5/18. All right. So common denominator when you're adding and subtracting. Common denominator when you're adding and subtracting. Now, number 9 is an adding and subtracting problem, but what is the issue? Any?
You have to make it 5 and 9.
Good. There's like no fraction right here. You do not just bring down 5/9. That's the big boo-boo. Okay. So what we're going to do, oops. So what we're going to do, from the 6, I am borrowing a whole number from the 6 and it becomes a 5. How do I write a fraction as a whole number? Okay, and why are you choosing 9/9? Good, you're looking ahead and saying, oh, I need to make a whole number that has the same denominator as 9. So that's your 9/9. Okay, now it can subtract. 9 minus 5 is 4/9, and 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay. All right, here's another problem where I'm adding and subtracting. So what do you have to say about that? I need a common denominator. So between 4 and 5, my common denominator should be 20. So I'm going to multiply by 4 and I get 8. I'm going to multiply by 5 and I get 15. And what do we see? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so the problem is that you cannot do 8 minus 15, so I have to borrow. So I'm going to borrow and make this 35. Okay? And when I borrowed, what am I adding to this little guy right here? 20/20ths. I'm adding 20/20ths. So there's the whole number that I'm adding. And why did you choose 20/20ths?
You're taking 1 from 36 and adding it to...
My whole number denominator, I wanted a denominator of 20, and I wanted to make it a whole number. So 8 plus 20/20ths means this thing right here that I want to deal with is 28/20ths. Okay? Now I can subtract. 28 minus 15, 13/20ths. And 35, is it 12? And 13/20ths. Okay. So let's review those three. Adding and subtracting fractions, you needed common denominators. And then we addressed how to borrow and make a whole number common denominator fraction. All right. Now to the multiplication and division of fractions. Multiplying and dividing, no common denominator on these. No common denominators. These ones you want to just make sure that you make them into improper fractions. So you're going to boomerang them, basically, which is this. So that's 2 times 3 plus 1. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So this number here is 7/2 times, and let's boomerang this one. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 3 is 11/4. Okay? Now, nope, you multiply, you don't butterfly. I mean, you could look and see if there's any reducing you could do first. I would reduce, and you can reduce the corners. Is there any reducing on the corners that you can do? No. Multiply straight across. You multiply. You don't butterfly. You multiply straight across. You butterfly whenever you have an equal sign in between them. It's an equation, which that's what you've been doing probably for the last 4 years. But this is back before then. Yes, you could cross reduce. But this couldn't. But you could. But you should. Hypothetically, you should do that first. I would. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to multiply. Or now I've got 77/8, which is improper fraction. So what am I going to do? Okay. So it's essentially this right here. 8 goes into 77 9 times, and that's 72. And so that's 5/8. Okay? That's just if you can't do the division in your head. So that's 77 divided by 8 is 9 5/8. All right. Okay, number 12. Begin the same way. Begin the same way. Boomerang here, and you get 6/8/3 divided by boomerang. That's 6/11/6. But right now, stop. Do not do anything until we talk. You cannot divide fractions. You multiply by the reciprocal, so that keep the 8/3 the same, and this changes to times 6/11. Now we do it just like above.
Wait, can you read?
Okay, so I first boomeranged 6 plus 2, 8/3, and then this boomerang, 6 plus 5 is 11/6.
Okay. Now,
And
why did you switch it?
after that, division of fractions is a no-go. This part now changes to multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply, it changes to multiplication, and this flipped upside down.
And that's going to be on
All of them. Every division problem.
Okay, yeah.
And so now now it's just like number 11, and we multiply straight across, and I get 48 on top of 33. 33 goes into 48 once with what left over? 15 left over? Ooh. But what do you see about 15 and 33? So this can reduce. So 1 and can divide by 3. 5 over 11. Now, I'm going to give you a little heads up on that. We're going to have a little discussion about that one reducing and something you could have done earlier in the problem to fix it.
We could have simplified it from the get-go.
Well, hold on. Let me show you where the get-go is. Right here, if you can reduce the corners, you can. So you don't have to, but you would have to reduce later. You either reduce now or reduce later. Let me demonstrate. Okay, let me go back to this. Okay, say, what were my numbers? My numbers are 8/3 and 6/11. Okay. Okay, hey you guys, listen up. Let's go through this division. Let's go through this simplifying first. Shh, shh, shh. So if I reduce this ahead of time, this becomes a 1 and this becomes a 2, and essentially I've got 8 over 1 times 2 over 11, and this turns into 16 over 11, which goes into 1 and how much is left over? 5 with 11 on the bottom. And guess what? That's exactly what this one ended up reducing to whenever we had to reduce it from that. So it's best to look at it here and see if you can reduce the corners before you multiply. Reduce any corners before you multiply across.
That's a new song.
Could be. Reduce any corners before you multiply across. Now, number 13 is just your integer rules. So let's see if you know you're adding and subtracting integer rules. So how about number 13? What do you see as that? Same signs, so they add and you keep the sign. The one below it, -8 plus 5. Different signs, so you subtract and keep the sign of the bigger. Okay, this one is division. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and there's two negatives make a positive when you multiply and divide. Negative divided by negative is a positive. Now, what are you going to do right here where I have minus and negative? Some people go make your 2 marks. The way I make 2 marks is that way. But some people go plus plus. So however you make your marks to simplify that, do it. And so what is -6 plus 2 is -4. Okay, now let's do this one. Up here in the top, -6 divided by 2 is -3. 5 minus 9, -4. 8 times -4 is -32. How about this? -6 minus 2, -8. All right. Now, you have completed this version B front. So today you're going to complete this version B back, which is page 21. Okay. So in class today you must do page 21 and the version C back, page 23. So your assignment is page 21 and 23. That's your assignment. You do have to do those. And then we're going to test the back on Monday.